Welcome to Storytelling Anime. Today, I will continue to storytelling anime Steins Gate. Moments after Mayuri's death, Suzuha rushes into the lab and creates a distraction, allowing Kurisu to use the time leap machine to send Rintaro back in time to 5 p.m. the same day. Rintaro drives everyone out of the lab before frantically searching for Mayuri, during which he receives a call from Kurisu, who deduces that he made a time leap. Finding Mayuri, Rintaro attempts to flee with her to the station, only for the trains to have stopped. When they are both approached by rounders, they attempt to flee, but Mayuri is once again killed when she is run over by Mocha's car. Escaping the rounders' clutches and performing another time leap, Rintaro locates Mayuri earlier and escapes to the subway station. However, Mayuri is killed once again when Yugo's daughter, Nei, accidentally pushes her into the path of an oncoming train. Devastated, Rintaro vows to keep leaping to the past until he manages to save Mayuri. As each of Rintaro's attempts to save Mayuri keep failing, he learns from Mocha that the lab was targeted by SCRN due to their creation of a time machine and their plan to publicly announce it. Falling into despair over his repeated failures, Rintaro is approached by Kurisu, who gets him to reveal his situation and gives him key trigger phrases to get her past self to cooperate with him. After being sent to just before the time leap machine's completion, Rintaro manages to obtain Kurisu's aid before they are both approached by Suzuha. She explains that to save Mayuri, they need to escape the Alpha World Line attractor field, where Mayuri is doomed to die due to the converging nature of world lines, and cross the 1% divergence point to the Beta World Line, where the outcome might be different. Suzuha then takes Rintaro and Kurisu to the crashed satellite, which turns out to be a time machine, and reveals she is in fact John Titor, and has come from the year 2036. Suzuha explains how SCRN was able to build a time machine and use it to create a totalitarian world in 2036, stating that she had originally planned to travel to 1975 to acquire an IBM 5100, but made a detour to the year 2010 to look for her father. When she tries to start the time machine, she discovers it has broken down, which Rintaro realizes was a result of the storm on the night he stopped her from leaving. Leaping 2 days before the completion of the time leap machine, Rintaro gathers the lab members to inform them of the situation. While Daru is tasked with fixing Suzuha's time machine, Mayuri suggests that everyone also helps Suzuha find her father, using a pin badge he gave her as a clue. Suzuha also gives Rintaro a device called the divergence meter, which keeps track of the magnitude of differences between world lines, and tells him about how he founded the resistance against SCRN in the future. After spending the day searching for Suzuha's father, Rintaro is thanked by Suzuha before receiving a lead on Suzuha's father from a badge maker. Unable to get much information about the badge maker's client, Rintaro decides to leap back in time to confront the client in question, only to find it was Daru, who wanted to make a fake badge to cheer Suzuha up. Daru then reveals that Suzuha's time machine is only able to travel backward in time, meaning they won't be able to see her again once she leaves. As the repairs to the time machine are completed, Mayuri deduces from the time machine's name that Suzuha's father is actually Daru. After a short reunion, Suzuha travels back to 1975, though Rintaro notices the divergence meter's reading has not changed. A few hours later, Yugo delivers a letter written by Suzuha in the year 2000, revealing that she had committed suicide a year later. In the letter, Suzuha laments that she had failed her mission, as the damages to the time machine caused her to crash and lose her memories for 24 years. Blaming himself for stopping Suzuha on the night of the storm that damaged the time machine, Rintaro sends a D-mail that stops him from following Suzuha, letting her use the time machine before it was damaged, but making her forget meeting her father. Speaking with Yugo again in the New World Line, Rintaro learns that Suzuha had died of illness instead and receives her divergence meter, which is now showing a different value. Despite the change in divergence, Mayuri's death still takes place, albeit a day later than in the previous world line. Kurisu theorizes that, since negating Rintaro's D-mail stopping Suzuha delayed the attack, Undoing the effects of the other D-mails could bring them back to a world line where they have an IBN 5100, allowing them to hack into SERN and delete the records that set them on their trail. Rintaro starts by trying to figure out how to reverse Ferris's D-mail. After helping her evade a rival gang of Rynet players, Rintaro takes Ferris to the place where her maid cafe used to be and tells her about the way Akihabara was. This causes Ferris to recall some of her memories from that world line in the D-mail she sent, a fake ransom note, which prevented her father from boarding a plane fated to crash. The rival gang catches up to them, but they are rescued by the arrival of Ferris's father. Speaking to him, Rintaro learns that he was forced to sell the IBN 5100 he had to pay for the fake kidnapping's ransom. After accepting the reality of her father's death, Ferris agrees to send a D-mail cancelling out her previous one, turning Akihabara back into a mohub. The IBN 5100, however, remains out of Rintaro's reach. Rintaro tells Luca about how she used to be a male and urges her to reverse the D-mail responsible to change Mayuri's fate. While she initially doesn't believe him, she later agrees to do so on the condition that Rintaro takes her on a date. Despite Kurisu and Daru's advice on dating, Rintaro and Luca spend the date together in an awkward conversation. Like Ferris, Luca eventually recalls the previous world line where she was a male, distressing her as a return to it would prevent her from pursuing her feelings for Rintaro. Before sending the D-mail that would negate Luca's first one, Rintaro realizes that the reason they did not enjoy their date was that he was trying to be someone he was not. As a result, Rintaro returns to the shrine and spends the rest of the day training with Luca like they used to. With their relationship repaired, Rintaro sends the D-mail, moving back to a world line where Luca is a boy, leaving the next D-mail to be reversed, Mocha's. Arriving at Mocha's apartment only to learn that she committed suicide, Rintaro leaps to an earlier time, finding Mocha to be a nervous wreck due to not having been contacted by a person known as FB, who had given her the orders to find the IBN 5100. Rintaro steals Mocha's phone and sends a D-mail from it, but discovers that she had lied about the contents of the message she had sent in the previous world line. Confronting Mocha about FB and telling her about her future suicide, Rintaro finds the offending text, which involved the location of the IBN 5100, but annulling it via another D-mail still does not change the world line. As Okabe realizes he needs to send a D-mail from FB's phone to convince her past self to follow its instructions, Mocha, feeling betrayed by FB for not contacting her, tells him where to find the IBN 5100. Despite Okabe knowing the location of the IBN 5100, Kurisu advises against trying to steal it, instead suggesting that he stake out the location to find FB, with Mocha deciding to join him. As they observe the IBN 5100 being taken out, they follow it as it is passed along to several people, including Yugo, before it ends up on a plane bound for France, where a CRN is located. Rintaro, Mocha, and Kurisu go to confront Yugo, who reveals himself to be FB, and a rounder who was forced to do CERN's bidding to prevent harm from befalling Ney. Following the code of the rounders for those who fail their mission, Yugo kills Mocha before taking his own life. Rintaro then uses Yugo's cell phone to finally cancel out Mocha's D-mail, returning to a world line where both Mocha and Yugo are alive and the IBN 5100 is once again in their possession at the Future Gadget Lab. As Rintaro gets Daru to hack into the SCRN network to erase the data they have on them, he comes to the sudden realization that by doing so, he would have to return to a world line where Kurisu is dead. Not wanting to move to a world line where Kurisu dies, Rintaro decides against the hacking. Too afraid to tell Kurisu the reason behind his change of plans, Rintaro accompanies Mayuri to a comic market, trying to think of a way he can save her without sacrificing Kurisu. As a car appears during Mayuri's fated time to die, Rintaro attempts to change destiny by letting the car hit him instead, but Mayuri pushes him out of the way and dies in his place. After he leaps back in time, Kurisu has Rintaro reveal to her that she dies in the Beta World line. Later, Rintaro finds Mayuri visiting her grandmother's grave, overhearing that she's been having dreams of the times she has died and that she has noticed Okabe's suffering. Meanwhile, Kurisu visits the location where she is destined to die in the Beta World line. Kurisu reveals to Rintaro that she recalls her stabbing from dreams, as well as Rintaro's various attempts at saving Mayuri. When Kurisu tells Rintaro that he should save Mayuri over her, he cannot accept it and runs back to the lab. As Rintaro attempts to time leap again, Kurisu stops him, worried that seeing Mayuri die over and over will destroy him. After giving in and choosing to save Mayuri, Rintaro tells Kurisu he loves her, to which she responds by kissing him. The next day, Kurisu prepares to return to America, while Rintaro and the others delete the original D-mail from the SERN network. Just after erasing the data, Kurisu returns to the lab to tell him that she loves him, but is cut off as Rintaro shifts back to the Beta World line. Sometime after getting rid of the phone wave, Rintaro receives a call from an alternate Suzuha, telling him she needs his help to prevent World War III. Suzuha explains that her mission is to prevent Kurisu's death and enter a world line known as Stein's Gate, in which World War III never happens. Wanting to save Kurisu, Rintaro travels to the past with Suzuha in her time machine, arriving before Kurisu's death. Witnessing events unfold as they did, Rintaro briefly runs into Kurisu, explaining their prior encounter, before hiding in the room where she will be stabbed. There, Kurisu meets with her father, revealed to be Dr. Nakabachi, who attempts to take ownership of her time travel theory for himself. Rintaro attempts to save Kurisu but inadvertently stabs her himself, allowing Nakabachi to escape with her theory to Russia, an event that will lead to a time machine arms race and eventually, World War III. As Rintaro falls into despair and refuses Suzuha's offer of a second attempt, Mayuri slaps him, stating that he was never one to give up on someone or something. Suzuha then reveals that Rintaro was intended to fail the first attempt so that the scrambled video message he received on the day of Kurisu's death could be made viewable. This turns out to be a video from his future self, explaining that the key to saving Kurisu without changing the events that led him to develop the time machine and causing a paradox is to fool his past self into believing Kurisu has died. Picking up a light-up sword to use its liquid as a substitute for Kurisu's blood, Rintaro and Suzuha return to the day of Kurisu's death. To prevent a metal UPA toy from ending up with Nakabachi's papers, which previously saved them from being destroyed in a fire on the plane flight, Rintaro obtains it himself first from the toy machine so that Mayuri ends up with a plastic one, which would later make its way to Kurisu and Nakabachi. Finding that the liquid in the gadget has dried up, Rintaro provokes Nakabachi into stabbing him, leading Nakabachi to run off in fear with Kurisu's research papers. After knocking Kurisu out with a taser, Rintaro uses his own blood from the stab wound to recreate the scene he originally saw, fooling his past self and sending him on his time-hopping journey. As Rintaro returns to the present, Suzuha gives her thanks before disappearing, as she does not yet exist in the Steins Gate world line. After recovering from his wounds, Rintaro starts giving out badges to the lab members he recruited in other world lines, saving one for Suzuha, who will arrive into their world line in 7 years. Later, while walking in the streets of Akihabara, Rintaro has a chance encounter with Kurisu, who appears to have retained some memories of the other world lines. 2 months after the main storyline, Rintaro, Daru, Mayuri, and Luca are invited by Ferris to come to Los Angeles, where she will participate in a Rhinet tournament, reuniting with Kurisu upon their arrival. Due to Rintaro's cancellation of Ferris's hotel reservations for them as a result of his ego, the group ends up checking into a motel. Later that night, Kurisu talks to Rintaro about the dreams she has had of past world lines and the romance they shared. After visiting the card tournament Ferris had entered, Rintaro spots someone that looks like Suzuha and chases after her, having a conversation in which she mentions that a fortune teller had foretold her having a child in 7 years. After the girl leaves, Rintaro discovers that his phone is uncharged and he is almost broke, leading him to make his way back to the city on foot. He is eventually found by Kurisu, who becomes stranded with him after her car runs out of gas. While waiting to be rescued, the two discuss the world line where they confess their love for each other, leading Rintaro to make his confession once again. An alternate version of episode 23 aired as part of a rerun leading to the release of Steins, Gate Zero. After Rintaro comes back from his failed attempt to save Kurisu, Mayuri comforts him, feeling that the burden of changing the future is too much for one person to take. Left in despair over being unable to save Kurisu, Rintaro discards his mad scientist persona and starts living as an ordinary university student. Sometime later, Rintaro meets an AI version of Kurisu. That all for the story about Steins Gate. Hope you like it, thank you. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Next episode I will continue to storytelling Steins Gate Zero, which is like a second part of anime Steins Gate. Thank you. Have a nice day.